Welcome to the Marie Manucherry Show, where energy and medicine meet. I will be your host for the next hour. I have over 19 years of healthcare experience and began my career as an energy medicine practitioner while working as an oncology nurse at a Seattle area hospital. My skill in moving energy combined with my medical background have been a catalyst for change in many people's lives. I hope the next hour will be transformative for you as well. Hello and welcome to the Marie Manucherry Show. We're live here in gorgeous, sunny, just a little bit of wind, Seattle, so that you don't perspire too much and, have to jump in the pool. Like of course, many people throughout the United States are doing right now, and we send our cool breezes to your part of the world so that you can rest and relax and enjoy your summer, as we're doing here. Have you been riding your bike?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Eric, and I have ridden my bike, especially last weekend, riding around, enjoying it quite a bit. Just around Tacoma.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I don't go on those into the forest, climb through the hills and all that stuff.
You don't?
No, it's too exhausting. So I just ride around the neighborhood and have fun.
That's so nice. Well, when I was looking at you, I could see you on a bike, and I know we haven't even talked about bike riding.
I know I really haven't done as much as I would like to this year, but I was just thinking about it a few minutes ago, like, why have I not ridden my bike very much? I've been watching too many great TV shows. That's the problem.
Save them up for the fall or
That's
the
right.
winter. And, we're just so lucky right now to have what I call like the dream Seattle type of summer weather. It's just stunning. And I think we're going to have great weather all through September.
Goldilocks weather.
Oh, I love that.
Not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah, it's perfect. I was on Whidbey this weekend riding my bike. And
ooh, beautiful.
Loved it. I was there 2 weekends in a row. So I still haven't taken my bike out of the car, because I'm thinking, well, can I dash over there again this weekend? Yeah. And, it's just amazing weather. So it's Thursday, and, of course, I get the honor and the joy of interviewing people on the show. Next week, we'll get back to a little bit of interviewing, and then the following week, we'll be doing just me and back and forth. So that'll be interesting as well. But, of course, I love to interview people, and I love to interview authors because books are one of my favorite things in the world. And as some of you know who've listened to me or seen me privately, manifesting is also one of my favorite things. So when Trevor Blake, who's our guest today, when he told me about the book that he was, I think you were finishing writing it, or you had just finished it when we met?
It had just come out of editing.
It just come out of editing. So, well, that's a nice feeling,
you
right?
You were my first test.
Oh, well, I love it. Yeah. And it was so nice that I got an advance copy. I so appreciate it. But then I lost it when I was, I think, in Palm Springs, and I nervously wrote you because I love books so much. The thought of losing an advance copy of a book made me so nervous, but you're so, of course, gracious and sent me another copy. So you can tell when I like a book, and I'm calling this my new favorite book.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. Tweeted, Facebook, my new favorite book, because it's highlighted, underlined, pages are bent.
The writing's that bad, is it?
Yeah, that's why I don't have the Kindle edition or whatever, I need to be able to hold it and squish it and, make marks it and all of those good things. So this book is full of marks and squishes. So Trevor, one of the fun things about you is that you have been a successful entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, by the way, and you've been using the techniques that you wrote about in your book, 3 Simple Steps, for a very, very long time, and you use them to help you free yourself from a life of being dedicated to the corporate world in a way that wasn't singing to your heart, and you were able to create and sell and continue to create and sell companies that you can believe in and that sing to your heart.
That's correct. I build companies, and I think you have to know in life if you're a builder or a maintainer. So I get bored very quickly, so I like to build, sell, and then do it again.
Well, one of the things I love is that despite stock market crashes, dot-com busts, and being the spectator of the recession, as many people were scared to death to do anything about changing careers or, God forbid, starting a business, that's the perfect time, you thought, and you even write in your book about how historically many great companies have been started during that time. You were able to start a virtual company from home using a few $1,000s of your own savings, and a few years later, without ever hiring an employer, leaving your home office, you sold it for more than $100 million. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, people like that number. There's something magic about 100 million. If it was 99 million, they wouldn't be interested.
No, I think we would. I think 99 million, we would still be interested. And so, of course, that catches someone's, information as well. But what I love about your book is the steps really are 3 simple steps They're phenomenal, simple steps. You talk in the book that step number 2 is the most difficult one. I would agree with you, although I think for people who haven't learned on being positive in their lives, step 1 could be probably one of the most challenging steps.
I think it depends where you are. The book is designed to help people who feel that their life is stuck in quicksand to get out of that quicksand. After that, it's up to the person to go in any direction they want. So, some people work hard on step 1, and some people are already doing step 2, so it's a natural thing. You understand energy, so step 2 seems more natural to you, I think. You probably have got into it more quickly.
Yeah, I did. I'd actually started, just so for our listening audience, why don't you just briefly say what step 1, 2, and 3 are, briefly?
Well, I think of the 3 steps, and I think of each of them as ingredients, like you would have ingredients in a recipe. So you can use them individually, and they have value by themselves. But when you use them in the right order, the right quantity, depending on where you are in life, and you apply the right amount of energy, which you can imagine if it was ingredients, you'd apply the right amount of heat to those ingredients, then they have the ability to transform. So the 3 ingredients might become a beautiful cake. Well, with the 3 simple steps, if you apply these steps in the right order for the right amount of time, they will transform your lives. And I can say that from 2 perspectives. One, I've been teaching these techniques formally and informally for many years, and to see people's lives change is just an absolute blast. I mean, it's transformative. And of course, my own life, I've had no advantage in life other than applying these 3 simple steps, and I can't complain. So.
Well, and your mother was a wonderful teacher for you in terms of the first step, at the very least. Learning to, despite odds and challenges. I often tell people that I grew up poor. Well, after reading your experience as a child, we were rich. We were filthy rich. Your family inhabited for a long time an abandoned home that kind of looked like a barn, actually, from the way you described it when you were growing up.
There's sort of an inverted snobbery about being poor. We all try to outdo each other now. It's like a Monty Python sketch, I was poorer than you were.
Yeah, really. No, you win.
I used to lick the road clean with my tongue and all that sort of thing.
No, you totally win.
So we did. I mean, by the time I was 7, we'd been evicted 3 times from apartments above stores. And then in those days, this was in the late 60s, you could literally pack all your belongings into a truck and escape from your bailiffs or creditors and hide out in the hills. And that's literally, we did that under cover of darkness. And the van we had actually coughed to a stop and broke down outside this derelict farmhouse. And I think the farmers that owned it were just thrilled to find somebody who actually wanted to live there. And that's where we stayed thereafter. And the truck never worked again.
Wow.
And it was built in, I like to say this because here it's an unusual thing to talk about, but the house was built in 1601.
Wow.
And nothing had changed except the roof. It had a new slate roof. One time it would have been thatched, but it had the original thick boulder walls. And all the plaster that held it together had disintegrated. So from the inside, it looked like it had been bitten by mice. It looked like a piece of cheese. But that was good for us because we were forever being hounded by creditors and bailiffs, and so we could spy from the inside until they escaped, and then I could tell my parents to come downstairs. It's okay. It's all clear. So we lived in that place, and it was just so cold, freezing cold. But as a child, it was just a great adventure too.
Right.
I didn't realize how poor we were until I left home and then came back, and it was a bit of a shock when I saw how I'd lived.
Right. And everything was kind of the same when you and your siblings went back after your father passed, which you write about in the book. I mean, for those of you who are wanting to manifest, this is an excellent, wonderful book, but the stories too are endearing and interesting. And you write about after your father had died, you returned home for at some point, I don't know if it was for the funeral or not.
No, it was some years later. He was evicted for a 4th time after my mother was buried, and we found out that the people who owned that farmhouse, they hadn't received rent for many years, but hadn't said anything because they loved my mother and weren't going to turn out somebody who was ill. But as soon as she was buried, then they turned my father out, and he disappeared for a long time. We found him, got him back on his feet again, and then we decided to do some closure. So we went back to the place we grew up. And paid our respects to the grave, and this would be in, I think, 2000. So no one had been back to that house since 1984, and we thought, it'd be more derelict. It looked like the Marie Celeste, the ship that was just found floating in the ocean, and it looked like people had just jumped overboard that moment.
Wow.
It was the kitchen table was still set for breakfast. His bedgown was still lying over the end of the bed. There was things in the airing cupboard. It really was quite a surreal experience. But it was good closure. I picked all kinds of mementos up to bring back to the United States, but I ended up, before we closed the door, I put them back inside because it was time to move on.
Right.
But quite surreal.
Wow. Yes, and so step 1, which is about not being negative, cutting out the negativity in life.
Yeah, it's a little more than that. I'm not. You might be surprised that I'm not a big fan of the self-help movement. We can talk about why before you join the show, and I also pull back from positive thinking because sometimes positive thinking, all it does is make you feel better about the life you have, and most people want a better life, so it's not enough to get you there.
Right.
Plus, it's hard to control how you think because thoughts work at the speed of light. So if you see something you don't like, your thought is instantaneous, and it's hard not to have that thought or that feeling. So part one is more about how do you find that pioneering spirit with which we were all born, and what happened to it? Well, it got suppressed by all the negativity that you've seen on TV or from the friends or family around you, and that combination of people and media's opinion stops you from making individual decisions, and you can't become self-made if you're a slave to fashion or trend. You sometimes have to swim against the tide.
I do love fashion, though, I must admit. Shoes, purses, coats.
Well, you can see I don't.
No, you look lovely.
And my wife dresses me, thank goodness.
And you talk about really reclaiming your mentality, which is a beautiful way of approaching it, because we're all our unique person, that following, like you said, not always, being negative, but then overly focusing on the positive could be disappointing if people are overly focusing on the positive and things aren't moving in a positive direction. The idea of really inhabiting your own unique mentality that belongs to no one else but you is a great idea.
And it's, I didn't create this idea or it's not any genius on my part. Going back to when I was young, when we escaped to that rural part of Wales, believe it or not, my accent identified me as foreign. Right. And it's hard to hide shabby clothes, especially when you've got odd-coloured shoes on your feet. So when you look poor and you are also treated as something of a foreigner, you're a target for bullying. So I was subject for a while to what we could call sectarian bullying. And the one place I knew my tormentors wouldn't go was the public library, obviously. And so I used to hide out there, and that's where I started to read autobiographies of self-made men and women. And it just inspired me because there were people like Madam C.J. Walker and Carnegie and Ford and Samuel Colt. And these people had worse starts in life than I did, but they found a way out. And what I found was it wasn't about how they thought about the situation, it's how they reacted to how they thought about that situation, and that made the big difference. And I decided to introduce what were really their techniques, although they probably didn't have labels for them. But I sort of adopted their behaviors and attitudes, and I made it into this first step, and that was enough to get me out of poverty, just that first step.
Wow. And along with that first step, your mother was ill for a big part of your life, most of your life.
Right. She was diagnosed with breast cancer and given 6 months to live when I was 8. And I remember it very well because I remember my father telling my sister not to tell her older brother, and she, of course, told me an hour later and told me not to tell my younger brother, so I told him that night. And we never mentioned it again. It was never mentioned in the family, but I was there with her when she told the doctors that wasn't long enough.
Right.
She wanted more time. And then one day, she was in the kitchen washing dishes, and I was in the hallway, and I was being a typical naughty 8 or 9-year-old, in that I know if I went in the kitchen, I'm going to have to dry the dishes. So I was avoiding my chores, and I hung out in the hallway, but I could see through the gap in the door. And she got some pain in the chest. She dropped a dish and grabbed the chest. But then she looked out through the window, and she said, if you think I'm coming now, when my kids aren't fully grown, you've got another thing coming. And I thought, my goodness, I mean, I'm scared of her when she's in a bad mood. Even God's going to be scared of her in this situation. But, she was a woman of her word, and through 14 years of debilitating surgeries and constant pain, she made it and saw us all leave the nest. It was a tremendous thing.
And so she was a great role model of mentality.
She was my real life role model. I had my historical heroes, and I had a real life example of how you can develop that unshakable belief.
Right. No matter what anyone says.
No matter the circumstances.
Right. When a doctor's telling you have 6 months to live, or
it's up to you, not him.
Right. Which is beautiful. Well, I'm having the pleasure and the honor of interviewing Trevor Blake here on the Marie Manucherry Show. We're live in Seattle. You can also listen to us on the web at energyintuitive.com. And where else, Eric?
People can listen in on 1150kknw.com. Just go and click on the Listen and Watch Live button, and that'll take you to our Listen and Watch live screen, and you can actually stream the show live throughout the world, and you can watch the show live because now you're on camera, Marie.
Yeah, so I don't have to wear makeup and put on lipstick and fix my hair. But, hey, that's okay. That's lovely. If you want to ask Trevor a question today, please feel free to call in. And what numbers can they use?
Give us a call at 425-373-5527. That's 425-373-5527. And I'll give you the toll-free number right after these words.
Become a Reiki Master the weekend of October 5th through October 7th at the Redmond Town Center Marriott. This 2.5-day transformative workshop is open to all levels of experience and will certify you in Reiki 1, 2, and 3. You will learn to move energy within the body by practicing on other workshop participants. Marie will be your instructor, guiding you with her own symbolic sight and providing constructive feedback. Take this opportunity to fulfill your dreams of becoming your very own certified Reiki Master. You will receive attunements that allow you to practice Reiki at the master level and information on the laws that govern professional practice in Washington State. Enrollment is limited. Please call 425-825-5671 or visit Marie's website, energyintuitive.com, for more details.
Manson Mitchell welcomes Grant Cameron back for more about the presidents and UFOs on Friday.
Did the aliens really like Ike?
Then on Saturday, George Beam takes us on a tour of the amazing mind of Stephen King.
Followed by a return visit from medium Mickey Jacobs.
That's Manson Mitchell, Friday morning at 10 and Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific on Alternative Talk, 1150 a.m.
Have you been thinking about heading down a healthier path, but aren't quite sure where to begin? Marie has a set of DVDs that can help steer you in the right direction, with wisdom, insight, and a dash of humor. The Healing from Within series imparts practical tools you can easily use to expand personal health. Marie collaborated with frequent radio guest and naturopath Dr. Sheila Dunn-Merritt to produce 4 DVDs that include detoxification, heart health, brain health, and hormones. The DVD series can be purchased online at energyintuitive.com or by calling 425-825-5671.
Talk radio with a difference. Alternative Talk, 1150 a.m.
And if you do want to call into the show today here on the Marie Manucherry Show, you can call in toll-free at 877-825-8828. Again, that number is 877-825-8828. Now back to you, Marie.
Thank you so much, Eric. Today I'm interviewing Trevor Blake. He's a serial entrepreneur and success coach who used the ideas in his new book, 3 Simple Steps, first to escape poverty, as we were just talking about, then to achieve a life of adventure. He finally turned them towards financial independence and is currently building his 3rd company. So what's the 3rd company?
Actually, 4th.
4th? Okay,
Yes.
What's the 4th company?
It's a new medical company. I had a career in the pharmaceutical industry, a good career, and I know the pharmaceutical industry comes in for a lot of criticisms. A lot of it is justified, but I was fortunate. I only ever met people who cared about patients and were scientific in nature and really enjoyed it. But I was turned off by the corporate wastefulness, which is endemic in America anyway, but particularly abhorrent in the healthcare world, where those costs get passed on as high prices to the patient. So we have a virtual pharmaceutical company that we're focusing on rare diseases for children, which is, I've done it before, and it got too big, and I sold it. That was the one you mentioned for $100 million, and it was so much fun. I decided to take a 2-year sabbatical. That lasted about 2 weeks, so here I am again. So I can't help. I'm an addict.
I think it's wonderful. And we're so fortunate to have you do that. And I love modern medicine, but I believe it has its flaws like everything else. And, one of the companies that you've also grown, I don't know if you still have it or not, is a company dedicated to creating healthier ways for people to heal from cancer, detoxifying the toxicities of chemotherapy, which I so appreciate. Thank you so much for doing that.
Well, actually, that was an issue. All my companies have started in Seattle, but like everything else, it's always synchronicity. It's always putting your dreams together and your intentions, and things happen. And I happen to be doing some consulting work for a biotechnology company here, and they unfortunately ran out of funding. But they had this really fascinating program. They were developing cancer drugs that are very similar to drugs currently on the marketplace. So they had the same tumor-killing properties, but they had none of the side effects. And that leads to 2 things. One is that would be nice to have, but 2, if you have drugs without the side effects, people can take the drugs for longer, and therefore you get better outcomes. So I took that program and had been funding it myself until 2011, and then I found a company outside the United States that was willing to do a joint venture with me. So I own a third of it, I think, now, and I'm a director with it. But I keep out of the way because I'm not a scientist, believe it or not. So I try not to meddle with what they're doing.
Well, I just absolutely love that. And you're donating all the profits of 3 Simple Steps to cancer treatment.
Yes, and it's actually directly into that program. I'm a little leery of cancer charities because some of them, you just don't know where your donation is going, and some of them do have highly paid executives. And if you're donating money, you want to see it go to do something,
and something positive. Not another drug that's going to make even more horrendous side effects for someone.
Exactly. So the money goes directly into the laboratory.
Right.
And is put to work straight away.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for doing that. I know, of course, a lot of cancer patients, as I still get to see them, which is one of my favorite things in my practice. And one of the most, fascinating things that I think that people who've never been touched by cancer don't understand is that chemotherapy drugs actually cause cancer or can cause cancer. And so not only do we have to worry about our patients recovering from the illness that they have, but potentially getting another form of cancer from the treatments that they've received.
And, I saw that with my mother, obviously, and I've seen it with other people too. I worked in a cancer hospital in the nuclear medicine department for about 6 years one time, and you see it all the time, in that most people, I find, handle their cancer with tremendous grace and stoicism, but the side effects rob them of that dignity. And if we can develop things with less side effects, that's just going to be more powerful.
And I love what you said about them living longer, because I see so many people today living with cancer, living full lives and completely independent and happy and a full head of hair, but having to do treatments every now and then, but still, living a normal lifespan. And I think that's fantastic. It's steps in the right direction. So, step one is about reclaiming your mentality.
Absolutely.
Right? Step two is what you talked about in the book. And I do think it is actually a difficult step. It just happened to be when I read your book, I had already started doing 20 minutes in the evening. I had meditated for a while in the very beginning of my intuition expanding, and so much of my life changed. I stopped meditating, and it had dawned on me maybe like 6 months ago that maybe I was afraid of too much change. So I was like, okay, no more meditating. I'm not going to meditate. But this isn't meditation, and that's what I was also trying not to achieve, because there's pressure with meditation. You're supposed to have some euphoric experience, or voices are supposed to talk to you, which of course people then can't really, of course they do to me often, but you can't then really relax, and that's really what the 20 minutes, the second step is just to be.
It is, and the second step has many benefits, but I was interested in just one aspect. And, I first got into the second step when I was in my early 20s, and in those days I was playing soccer 3 or 4 times a week, and I was going to the pub. So meditation was the last thing I was likely to talk about in that environment, unless I wanted to be thrown out of both of those environments. So, but in the biographies of self-made men and women, it was startling to me that they all had a technique, and they gave it different labels depending on what was acceptable in their time, for solving problems. And whichever way they did it, they always ended up in a place by themselves, sitting quietly. People like Henry Ford used to go back to the farm he grew up in and find an old rocking chair and just sit there, and that's how he resolved most of his issues. And most people know his story. He was one day away from going out of business when he sold his first car, and he resolved that sitting in a rocking chair. Einstein was the same, and all these people. So I was always of the mind when I was that young that if it worked for them, who am I to say it's not worth having a go? So I did it privately and secretly.
Wow. How old were you?
I was probably about 21 when I started.
Wow.
And I'm leery also of the phrase meditation, because for me that conjures up something quite difficult, and it aims for something larger like enlightenment or something. I just wanted something to resolve the situation that I come across every week. I meet people who say, I want to take control of my life, maybe I want to start a company, I want a better job, but I just don't have any good ideas. And I was looking for a method that can put you in a situation where you can have good ideas not once but on a regular basis, and that's the technique that I use. It's so simple, incredibly effective, but anyone can use it. From 9 to 99 can sit down tomorrow, start using it, and see benefits immediately. The reason I say it's probably the most difficult step is that it does border on the esoteric, and for some reason most of us, start to think that's a little weird.
Not on the show.
Not you, no. Well, not me either, but I do meet people who think, oh, you do that, do you? How strange. But it's really interesting that these really successful people do that, and you don't have to go too far in history. Steve Jobs, he did exactly what I have in this book. Took quiet time every morning, and people who look at his life and describe his life talk about his management style, and then they skip over the 5% that they call weird, because at least it didn't affect the successful part of his life, whereas they should be connecting the dots. between that 5% of what people call weird stuff and the success.
And the success, right.
And whether it works or not, I wouldn't dare stop because I've sold 2 companies for over 100 million.
Right, exactly.
You know?
I can tell you that the first thing in the morning really does make a difference. And you state in the book, it's the first thing. So, I brush my teeth and that's about it. I do grab a cup of tea on my way to wherever I'm going to be sitting, just in case I want to. Yeah. But it's just, I think because your brain's still quiet from hopefully a night of rest, that you're not inundated with your phone, the computer, the noise of the home. It's like you really get to just chill for a moment. It's amazing.
And I've tried to find scientific reasons why we do all these things and get benefit, and in the book I've included some of those, because we're in an age where neuroscience has come on leaps and bounds, and you can map what goes on in the brain when you do these things. They call it, some people will call this mindfulness, or just
right.
setting the mind aside, and you can see what happens in the brain when you do that. What's interesting is, though, that people think when they take quiet time that they're slowing the brain down, but actually it's the only time during our waking hours that the brain is allowed to work at its full power.
Wow.
Because the brain works at the speed of light. Everything else we do in our waking hours slows the brain down so that it can help us do these menial things that we think are speeding up our lives, like getting my fat thumbs to work on a BlackBerry.
Right.
That really, you have to really slow down for that. And we think we're fast and productive, but it's the opposite.
Oh my
So
gosh.
for that first 20 minutes in the morning, that's where your brain is just left alone to do what it's meant to do. And that's why after that you get these incredible ideas. And every day I think, why didn't I think of that before?
Right.
I call them moments of insight. And in all of those self-made men and women, the biographies I've read, that makes a difference. One moment of insight makes a difference between success and mediocrity, and that's what you're aiming for.
Right. And so even if someone doesn't want to start their own company but wants to be successful in a corporation that hopefully that they enjoy and feel inspired by to work for, that this can help them to be successful as well.
Absolutely, because I talk about quicksand. If people feel they're in the quicksand, when you're in the quicksand, the harder you struggle, the deeper you sink, and you don't know which way to turn to get out. So you need an idea. You need a moment of inspiration. Mm-hmm. So you have to do that second step. And for most people, it comes fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. I get more response, more emails, more phone calls from people who have been blown away by the effects of the second step than anything else.
And also, you mentioned this in the book, but I actually felt it physically. I think my body benefits from it. My physiology, my anatomy. I can feel all this energy just pouring into my body. And busily at work, which kind of relates to what you said about the brain working faster in that moment of rest, of semi-rest, you could say. I mean, that to me is like a huge benefit. That's what gets me out of bed. Because I'd rather just lay in bed to the very last second until I have to get up. But for the last few weeks, I have not been doing that. I've been getting up so that I have 20 minutes by myself in a comfortable place, inside or outside, just depending on my mood. And I think what draws me out of bed for now anyway is just that I feel like it's a positive effect for my health.
Well, and for most people, it's the only time during the day where it will be peaceful. And 15 or 20 minutes is an incredibly long time of silence in our lives today. I mean, you and I could stop talking for 5 seconds now. Let's just do that.
Okay.
It's long. See? It seems natural. I hope the listeners haven't
No, it's
they're
great.
kicking their radios now, seeing what's wrong with it. But it's a long time. So imagine 15 minutes of that. It is a long time. And your brain really responds to that.
Right. Yeah, it's just amazing. So then the third step, what happens or what you believe happens when you've had this restful time and you're connecting to your own mentality, that spontaneous ideas come up. Mm-hmm. Right, and so then the job of the individual is to follow those ideas.
Well, the reason the steps are in the order they are is that we all get good ideas all the time. But if you're not doing step one, if you're not controlling your mentality, in step two you may get a great idea, but the first thing you do is put the radio on, and I'm on radio now. But let's say you put the radio on, and the first words you hear are that the world is crashing. The economy's going south. You're just lucky to have a job. Well, the great idea you just had has just been crushed. So you do have to control the mentality first so that when you get those great ideas, you choose how to react to them.
Mm-hmm. In fact, you mentioned that if you're not controlling the mentality, actually spending some quiet time, well, maybe not the quiet time, but the ideas that you're going to get are not going to be beneficial or helpful.
And you may not even notice them because you're too busy looking after the kids or taking the dog for a walk. I mean, life just invades that brain and slows it down. So, it's a real treat to give yourself 15 to 20 minutes to yourself in the morning. It's an incredibly selfish treat. I can't imagine my life without it. And it's interesting that I do it just for the idea generation, but I know there are health benefits too. And on the days when I don't do it, because I slip up as well like everybody else does,
sure.
My wife knows immediately.
Really?
Yeah, she can tell on the phone. And she'll say to me, you didn't take your quiet time this morning. So she can tell by my demeanor it's different.
Oh. Well, I'm certainly enjoying our conversation here with Trevor Blake. We're talking about his first and your newest book that's available at Amazon.com. And where else can people find it? Amazon for right now.
And Barnes & Noble.
And Barnes & Noble.
And 3simplesteps.com.
Oh, wonderful. So we're going to take a break here on the Marie Manuchehri Show, and we'll be right back.
And if you want to call in today, you can at 425-373-5527. Again, that's 425-373-5527, or toll free 877-825-8828. That's 877-825-8828.
Become a Reiki Master the weekend of October 5th through October 7th at the Redmond Town Center Marriott. This 2.5-day transformative workshop is open to all levels of experience and will certify you in Reiki 1, 2, and 3. You will learn to move energy within the body by practicing on other workshop participants. Marie will be your instructor, guiding you with her own symbolic sight and providing constructive feedback. Take this opportunity to fulfill your dreams of becoming your very own certified Reiki Master. You will receive attunements that allow you to practice Reiki at the master level and information on the laws that govern professional practice in Washington State. Enrollment is limited. Please call 425-825-5671 or visit Marie's website, energyintuitive.com, for more details.
There's an exciting new astrology hour, Tuesdays at 5 p.m. with Deborah Silverman. Deborah's unique blend of psychology and astrology turns planetary language into plain English. Join us for an interactive hour that's guaranteed to give you personal insights in a fun and entertaining way. Tune in to Deborah Silverman Live. Whatever your life question, marriage, job, family, relocation, or just curiosity, call for a live reading Tuesdays at 5 p.m. and visit Deborah's website at deborahsilvermanastrology.com.
Don't touch that dial. You might miss something life-changing. Alternative Talk, 1150 a.m.
And welcome back to Marie Manuchehri Show. We're live here in gorgeous, beautiful Seattle. I'm going to be in Tempe, Arizona on August 24th and 25th. I'll be doing a book signing in the evening on Friday at 7 p.m. And then I'll be teaching a class on intuitive health between noon and 4, the Changing Hands bookstore in Tempe, Arizona. And then I'm off to Boston in September 11th at 7 p.m. I'll be doing a book signing at the Trenton bookstore. And then, of course, I'll then go to Squam. You've been hearing about Squam for months now. It's in beautiful New Hampshire. I will be teaching 2 workshops on creativity and intuition. You can find all of that on my website at energyintuitive.com. So, Trevor, you briefly mentioned, I hope you don't mind me saying this on the air, that you like to be in your alone space and you like to have your life quiet. And so now with a book coming out, you don't get to be that so much.
And it's quite surreal, I have to say. This is my first time in a radio studio, and I'm afraid to touch anything.
Well, you can, everything's fine. You don't have to worry about a thing. Eric controls everything for us, so, we can't mess it up, which is quite lovely. And you've been doing interviews several a day.
Right, for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and that will continue, I think, for another 3 or 4 weeks, and there's also some live TV coming up, which will be even more surreal.
Oh my gosh!
For me,
is that changing your mentality?
No, it's not. I committed to do it because it's all for a good cause. So
right.
I mean, this will always sound arrogant coming over to anybody, but I don't. This it could be categorized as a self-help book, but I'm not a fan of self-help books because so many of even the best-known self-help books are written by people whose only success is the book catches on, and then they seem like they know what they're talking about. But I've always felt that was dubious, and I wanted this. People have been asking me to write this for years because they've practiced what I've seen. They've seen me practice what I preach. They've practiced in their own life, and it's just incredible what happens. But I wanted to wait until I had the credibility to do that, and so I wrote 3 Simple Steps, and then I found a publisher. The very next day I finished it, actually.
Wow!
Because this is how the 3 Simple Steps work. I set an intention, and the phone goes, and there it is. And they thought it was interesting, but a little dry, and it needs my personal stories. Well, I'm a very private person, and it's been quite difficult to talk about these personal stories. But I think it adds to the authenticity.
Oh, totally.
At least I hope it does.
So you did change your mentality.
I did. I'm doing it all the time.
No, it's an absolutely excellent story. All of them are. You put a lot of personal stories in there. One I find also touching is that your wife was an oncology nurse, and that's how you met her. She was caring for your mother. when she was in the hospital.
It was one of my mother's last acts on earth, actually. She introduced me to her favorite chemotherapy nurse. I'd heard about her before, but I'd never met her. And I had taken compassionate leave. I was in the Royal Navy at the time. I'd taken compassionate leave, and it was my turn to take her for her chemotherapy. And I must admit I was a bit reluctant because I remember my soccer team were playing that night and I was going to miss a game. You know, I was very selfish, 20-year-old or whatever I was. And there she was. So she introduced me and that was it. I was smitten and I've been smitten every day since, I have to say. So if there's anyone out there who thinks that love at first sight is just for the novels, it certainly is not. I can tell you that.
Also, one of the stories I thought was also interesting, and where you were applying the 3 simple steps in your youth. You must have been around 18 or 19 years. And actually, I think you were younger, like maybe 16 or 17, was when you applied to go into the Royal Navy.
Right. In those days, I don't know if it's changed, it may have, but in those days, the British officer academies were very elitist. And the Royal Navy is the source for many of Britain's leading politicians and business leaders. So they're very picky. and Britain is a class structure, and I was working class. My accent is a Liverpool accent, or it's a mixed accent now. But in those days, I used to talk more like a Beatle than I talk today. and so that identified me as working class, and typically they don't get into the Royal Navy Academy. But I set my heart on it, and my career teacher told me to lower my expectations a little bit and suggested I go work in a chicken factory in the town next to where I was living, which was fun. And of course, all my family and friends were afraid of me making a fool of myself, so they tried to talk me out of it. But, I was determined to do it, and my mother and I took, I think it was about 6 bus trips to go to a recruitment office, and it started there, basically. And I remember the recruiting officer, just looking down his nose at me and saying, we really do appreciate people having big ideas, but we do have standards, and I don't want this young man to be disappointed. A real put down, if you like. And that was enough for my mother and I to say, right, we'll do this. So I applied for the Royal Navy, and I got a scholarship to the academy, and that's really how I got out of poverty and quicksand.
Wow. What I also think is interesting, and I think this whole idea of changing your mentality, because it continues over time. Your brain has to consistently change to change the landscape of your life. It's not just one moment of time, but it's kind of a constant thing. You also left a pretty assured career of the Royal Navy because it wasn't singing to your heart. It wasn't giving you what you wanted.
It wasn't, because it also has its sort of encapsulated class structure, and I had to change. I would have had to change very much the way I think in order to survive in that environment. I think I did very well when I was there, but there's a real divide between what they call the rank and file and the officer class, and they dislike each other intensely. Mm-hmm. Now, coming from a very poor background, I was more in tune with the rank and file than I was with the officer class. So it was very difficult for me to step over that divide. So I had one of those fork in the roads that you get. I know if I stay, I'm going to change, and I'm going to have to be like that, like one of those officers, or I could change. So I chose to go on a different path, and thank goodness I did, because less than a month later I met my wife. So
wow, lovely. So for those people who are working jobs right now and they're not happy, they're in the quicksand, as you call it, what kind of tips can you give them about how to stay in a positive place while they go to the quicksand job?
You have to understand first that you're not going to go anywhere until you pull back your own decision-making capacity and your own ability to think. And I know it sounds crazy, but we are influenced by everything around us, and we surround ourselves with friends who are usually of like mind. And they like who we are, and they like where we are. And when we want to step outside of that, it's hard enough to step outside your own comfort zone, but it's even harder to step outside their comfort zone. So you do need to be selective with the information that you allow into your brain until it becomes a habit. And I still do that now. There was a time in my life where I was up to my eyes in credit card debt. And so for me to watch the TV commercials that have credit card debt solutions would have been crazy, because every time I hear that word or see the credit card on the screen, it's going to get me a horrible feeling in my solar plexus and make me feel even worse about the credit card debt. Now, here we go into the little esoteric side, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but, everything in life is energy. So therefore, thoughts and words are energy. And, these days we understand the basic laws of physics, that energy has no alternative but to try to become its material equivalent. E equals mc squared. So if you have all these thoughts and you issue all of these words that are negative, then those thoughts and words have no choice but to bring to you that which you don't want. So the more you think about what you don't have and you don't want, sadly, the more you get it. And most people don't stop to think about that. And when you do, you get this sense of awareness, and you think, okay, I can't change the way I immediately think, but I can change what I issue as words. I can change the way I react. So now when you see the credit card bill come through the door, or the invoice come through the door, I used to do this out loud. It sounds crazy, but hey, I don't have credit card debt now, so it must work. I used to say, when I've paid off my credit card bill or my credit card debt, I will celebrate with a glass of champagne that I've bought myself at the store with cash. And I used to say that all the time. And it wasn't very long before something turned up, something I wasn't expecting. Actually, I think it was a bonus, a Christmas bonus my company gave me that I never expected, and that helped me wipe out my credit card debt. Now I'm pretty sure if I hadn't had that reaction, that wouldn't have shown up. Right.
And so did you go to the grocery store and pay cash for the champagne bottle?
Well, I haven't. My mother-in-law loves champagne, so I probably got, I did, and I probably got about half a glass of it. So.
So what about those days when, and this is a lot for a lot of people, they're going into their jobs, they have to go to meetings, and they're not enjoying the meeting, they don't want to be there, they really would much rather be outside. However, they would, in a compromise, they'd rather be at their own desk getting their work done rather than listening to something that they don't believe is very productive. Or maybe the meeting itself is negative.
In 3 Simple Steps, I've got a lot of techniques for how you handle those situations, because it's not always easy to escape the environment that's harming you. And we talk a lot about being in a situation where you surround yourself with complainers and that sort of thing. And the reason that's important, on all of this negativity is important to think about, is the latest neuroscience shows that the brain works more like a muscle than we ever imagined. And in doing that, the more you repeat a behavior, the more you become that behavior. So if you surround yourself with all these negative people, you eventually become negative yourself. Your brain hardwires into it. It's looking for a connection, unless you're aware of that and can take steps. But that's just half the story. The second half of the story is that Stanford is coming out with great data now that shows that if you expose your brain to 30 minutes of stresses every day, then you do physical damage to the brain, and you do it in a part of the brain, the hippocampus, which you need for cognitive function, problem solving, and adapting to changing circumstances, which is the life we live in. So I think of it as passive smoking, because I grew up, my father was a chain smoker. He'd be lighting a cigarette while he still had one hanging out the other side of his mouth, and it was like living in a smoke-filled balloon. I tried to change his habits. I tried to get him to stop smoking, which is a dangerous thing for a kid to try to do to his father. And in the end, my only recourse was to put distance between that poison and myself, and so I went outside and hung out in the fresh air for as long as I could. When you're in a toxic environment at work or at home where people around you are complaining all the time, or it's something you really deep down know you shouldn't be doing, you have to find some way to put distance there. If you can get out of that environment, great. If you can get them out of that environment, even better. If you can't do that, then mentally you can use some tricks that will help you. You'll still be there physically, but mentally you'll remove yourself from that situation. And I've got quite a few of those in 3 Simple Steps. And I've tried to think of any kind of scenario that you might find yourself in, and here's something that might work for you.
I think that's wonderful. And it was just simply feeling the energy around you can be a nice distraction or a way to escape, whatever's going on, because our world is so alive with, trillions and trillions of subatomic particles that you can entertain yourself really just by stepping out of the environment mentally and kind of etherically, and reconnecting to anything that's around you in a different way.
Absolutely. Sometimes just turning your back to the people you don't want to be with at that moment in time and looking at a view can be enough of a connection for your brain, because your brain will race to whatever connection or whatever source it can find. And so if your brain's hardwired into these complainers around you, that's not going to help you. But if it's hardwired into a beautiful view or some fresh air or something like that, that's good for you. And eventually you'll break that habit or that pattern.
Oh, I love that. So the more you use that technique rather than stepping deeper into the quicksand, then you'll break the pattern of focusing on the negativity.
The brain will do all the work for you. You don't have to try. I have a great real life example now, because my mother-in-law, who I've known for 30 years, we get on great and have a fantastic relationship. She spends the summer and fall with us, and so she arrived a couple of weeks ago. Where she lives now, she's surrounded by people of the same age. She's 83, and they're all complaining about the health problems, and the pension doesn't go far enough, and it's just complaint. Her brain hardwires to that. When she steps through the door, the first words out of her mouth are, "I'm sick to death of people complaining around me," and she's in that complaining mode straight away. Well, my wife and I have learned over the years just to ignore it, not try to change it, change the subject, immediately change the subject onto something more pleasant. And you know what? After 2 weeks, it's as if aliens came in overnight and took this angry woman away and replaced it with everyone's favorite granny. It's the transformation is remarkable. The granny didn't do anything. It was the environment that we changed for her. So if you're aware of that, it's really very small changes make a huge difference. And that's what I keep getting to in 3 Simple Steps. We're not trying to all become Mother Teresa. I mean, I mess up all the time. If you were with me when I was watching soccer, you'd think I'd never even read the book, let alone written it. So we just have to make small changes.
Oh, that's really cute. So, I think that you have this idea, one of the reasons why you wrote this book as well, that we're so lucky to live in a country where really we can make ourselves. And I actually like the idea, not everyone agrees with me on this, but shipping out the jobs that are boring for us to other parts of the world where people are more concerned about feeding their family. I'm not saying that we don't have people in our country that worry about that. Of course we do. But I think that we have the blessings of opportunities to be entrepreneurs here, to be unique, to manifest, to create whatever we wish.
There is nowhere in the world like this.
True.
I've been to 56 different countries because travel was one thing I wanted to do early in my life. And I have both perspectives because there is no way in any country that I've visited that someone like me with a working class accent, pretty average schooling, no family connections, no money to help me, can start a company and succeed simply because he works hard and he stays positive. There's nowhere in the world like this. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people have forgotten that or have lost sight of it. And I hope this book brings back some of that to people. I mean, if I can do it, absolutely anyone can do it.
Right. And then we have more happy people in the United States who then can, give money to their charities that they love and send some job to another country, where they're more than happy to do something that isn't really fulfilling us here in the U.S. So that's a wonderful credit to the book as well. Just getting people back into believing that they could do anything that they want. And a lot of people have unique ideas. If we just give them a moment, I'm always surprised and amazed by their creativity that people have in their brains.
I am too, and I come across a lot of budding entrepreneurs with great business plans. But typically what happens is they will tell me this great idea, and I get excited, my eyes light up, and think that's a good idea. And then they give me 20 minutes of reasons why it's the wrong time to do it. The economy is not good, banks aren't lending money, I've never been a CEO before, and all the rest of it. And they talk themselves out of it very quickly, and that idea gets crushed. And it's such a shame. And that's what step 3 is for. So step 3 is how you take that idea and then you make it a reality. You do something. And typically when I come across people who want to start their own business and they have a great idea, I encourage them to incorporate their idea, and they think that's crazy, but an amazing thing happens. Because instead of it just being an idea that eventually fades with all the problems we get in our everyday lives, by incorporating it, a week later they get a package of mail and there's the name of their company and it sits on their desk every day.
Love it.
And instead of going straight to email or straight to text in the morning, they spend a few minutes looking at that and it ferments these ideas. So it's all about how you react to the thought. That's very important. And so I meet these people who want to change their lives but then don't react to that. And so the book encourages you how to react to that.
To follow those hunches,
do something. Yeah.
Do
Get
something
started.
about it.
Yeah.
Get started.
Yeah.
And so give an example of something that someone could do that's not a big deal, doesn't cost a lot of money to get started.
Well, incorporation, $100. I mean, you can incorporate every idea. I've built 4 companies, but I've probably incorporated 20 ideas. And each time it just costs $100, and it's a simple online process. Most people are sort of put off by the jargon. They've never done it before, but it takes a few clicks now. Go online, type in, how do I incorporate? And you'll get 150 choices. Pick one, a few clicks, and then you get this beautiful embossed box or package that comes with the mail, and now you're real. You're a real company, and it does an amazing thing to you inside. You think, wow, and you can call yourself CEO.
Because you are the CEO. And so doing a step like that, you think, helps to inspire more of the mentality,
It does.
Right?
It does, and it's just you build up a degree of confidence, and it's all about getting started. I was fortunate in my career to come across and work with George Rothman, who people talked about as being the Bill Gates of the biotech world. And I was waxing lyrical about a business plan I had once, and he put his hand up and he talked to me. He died, unfortunately, this year. He was 84.
Aww.
When I was with him, he was in his 70s, and he talked to me like I was 12. So he said, son, and he says, you don't know what business you're in till you get in the business. Just get started. And that's sage-like advice. And, I listen to these great people who are successful, and if it works for them, then I'll try it out myself.
Right. So, in other words, most people are waiting for the perfect plan, everything in order, what to do next. They're looking for 100 steps, actually, and what to do. And you're saying that doesn't work.
No, I don't think I think your energy spirals around when you do that. I think if you want, You know more about energy than
right.
I do. You know, your mind is a magic wand, and you have to direct that energy somewhere if you want it to work for you.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, people ask me all the time, about how to create a successful healing practice, and I tell them that they need to celebrate that it's already there, jump around the house, light candles, get happy. Every person that you see, appreciate that experience enormously. Don't make a lot of plans. Just feel as if it's already happened to you in some way.
Right, and you don't know how it's going to work out. There hasn't been a day in business that I've been able to predict since I started my first company. Every day was not what I expected. And, the secret of success in business, in my opinion, is the ability to adapt unemotionally to constantly changing conditions. And you can't plan that. You could have a 100-page business plan, and the very first day you start your business, it's completely different to what you expected.
Wow. No, I completely agree. And I think that second step helps you to be adaptable.
Yes.
Right? Because then you're not focused, stressed, over anxious just from life itself, so that when that unexpected problem occurs that you need a creative solution to, you're in a good space to do that.
Yeah, and it's not just problems. I mean, you don't see opportunities if you're fixed on a plan like that. If you think you've planned it all out. At my first company, I thought I was getting into the oncology development business, and within a couple of months, I was in the enzyme replacement business, which I had absolutely no experience of whatsoever. But it turned out to be the best thing I ever did, and the most rewarding thing I ever did. But I could never have predicted it.
So you coach people too as well, or you have historically coached people. Is that something that you're looking forward to doing in the future?
I enjoy doing it. I've done it mostly pro bono, I have to say, and it gives me as much thrill as hopefully it gives the person who benefits from it. So I'm always happy to do it. I'm always open to it.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that's like your next step, not just pro bono, but do you think that's...
I have 3 books to write, so the next book is coming out next year, Virtual Success, and then I have a more personal book called Letters Home, which is coming out the year after. After that, I don't know.
Right.
I don't usually plan more than a few days in advance.
So really what you have planned now is writing and radio shows and television appearances.
Yeah, radio shows and television was a surprise. The writing I planned.
The writing you planned. And so what made you decide to write 3 books?
Just ideas that popped into me after taking quiet time, all 3 of them. And as you are now experiencing, it's not just a vague idea, it's pretty detailed when they pop into your head.
Yeah, and I love the stories. I absolutely love the stories. So what are some of the best tips that you could give someone right now? Someone who's, again, in the quicksand, stuck, they don't know what to do. They're going to order your book on Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com, or they're going to go to the website, 3simplesteps.com, and order the book. So what's something they can do in the interim before that book gets to the house?
I can only repeat what helped me, and that is that my mother always told me, if you want to learn to cook, speak to a chef, not a food critic. So read books of people who have been successful. Don't read books of people who have observed success. So I point that out in here, that there's an awful lot of books that talk about why certain people were successful. Don't listen to that. Go to the person itself. So read autobiographies, and you'll find it's amazing how a lot of those people experienced something that you might be going through right now. So that got me started, and I haven't stopped reading autobiographies. I love them because I pick something up in every single one I read. So 3 Simple Steps is a way out of the quicksand. Hopefully it's an authentic self-help book, but by no means should it be the last book you buy on how to succeed. So I'm a big fan of autobiographies.
Wow. And so when did you start reading those? In the library when you're getting away from the bullies?
When I was hiding, yes.
Right. You also mentioned, I know our time is getting short here, but you also mentioned in the book that that sometimes people are bullied because they're unique.
Yeah, and I think how you react to it is very important. And I've got, again, some examples in 3 Simple Steps, but it certainly helped me become more of an individual, although I wouldn't choose that method to get there. There's a great saying that, experience is what's happening to me. I wish to goodness it was happening to someone else.
Right.
So I didn't want that in my life, but I hopefully reacted to it positively. And I've got some examples of other people who you'll be very surprised who they are, were bullied, had suffered terrible bullying, and some of them considered suicide.
Right.
And they're amazingly successful people now. So it is about how you react. But quicksand can mean all kinds of different things to different people.
Sure, it could be a family situation.
And the starting point is always a desire to change. You've got to want to get out first. And once you want to get out, then hopefully 3 Simple Steps has got hopefully it's a helping hand along the way somewhere.
Well, I certainly have loved the book, as you can see by my highlighting and corner bending and underlining. It's one of my favorites, so I really encourage people to go out and get this book because it really is simple. It's beautifully written and it's simple, so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you. A week from today, I will be teaching my very last Riding the Wave of Happiness class at the Redmond Town City Marriott. We're not going to be teaching that class in the evening anymore because I'm just a little too busy. I'll still be offering classes, of course, in Seattle, but that will be our very last one. I've been teaching it for about 8 years now. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun saying goodbye to what I hope has been an inspiring class. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Great experience.
Loved it. And we wish everyone a joyful day wherever you are in the world, and hopefully nice sun like it is here in the Northwest, and restful sleep if you're not experiencing the daylight hours right now. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.